Brought to you by Charity Mobile. Switch to the phone company that supports your beliefs. All plans start under $50 before taxes and surcharges. Use promo code TRADITION at CharityMobile.com for a special offer. A major story broke over the weekend that a clip I'm going to start with from Bishop Athanasius Schneider will, I think, shed light on, even though it is on the surface completely unrelated. Bishop Schneider is offering masses and things at the Chartres pilgrimage, a pilgrimage that I think ends today. I might be wrong about that. But he is one of the main figures at the pilgrimage this year, the famous traditionalist pilgrimage. And he gave a homily yesterday, and I'm not going to post the full thing, but here's a clip. This clip is posted by Catholic Sat on X, saying that Bishop Athanasius Schneider, in his sermon on Pentecost Sunday at the pilgrimage, at the traditionalist parish to Chartres pilgrimage, says, well, the following, in his own words.
Even though there is so much technological progress today and human brotherhood for world peace, if Christ does not reign as king in our families and in our countries, then our world lacks true spiritual beauty. Then our world lacks full divine truth. Then our world lacks supernatural love. What does it mean to be Christian, to be Catholic? It means that Christ is the King of my life. It means that I am never ashamed to confess Christ and the truth of the Catholic faith. It means observing God's commandments with the help of His grace, purity of soul and chastity of body, mutual forgiveness, and tireless charity towards our neighbor.
Basic Catholic stuff. But we have lost sight of that. Thank you, Carl, for the Australian Super Chat. It is a sticker. It is appreciated. Let's go to our story here, because this is instructive of all of this. You can, if you want to, by the way, if you want to find that clip for yourself, I'll have it in my show notes at returntotradition.org. As you can see, it was on X. I imagine that Michael Matt will post the entire homily on the Remnant YouTube channel when he gets the opportunity, once the pilgrimage is over. So I would check there for the homily video in full in the coming days. But Bishop Schneider does remind us of a basic truth, that Christ is truly king, and that everything in our lives, both privately and publicly, will only be at peace when we individually and more broadly as a society recognize that he is truly king. It's a hard teaching for our time. Now let's go to the news that shocked people this weekend, and a weekend that had some multiple shocking news stories in the church. A major U.S. diocese is undergoing a massive restructuring due to bankruptcy. So we go to the pillar, and I was amused when the story went viral because other news outlets reported it, even though the pillar was the one who broke it and they didn't cite the pillar. So we will recognize here that the Pillar Catholic was the originator of this story, and that others came afterwards without citing them. Naughty, naughty. Headline: Washington Archdiocese to make layoffs amid crippling economic challenges. Cardinal McElroy: dedicated, hardworking employees will lose their jobs. No indication in the article that the end of USAID funding of Catholic charities is directly involved in this, but it is worth reminding people of how funding for Catholic nonprofits works. So whatever the originating organization is for the grant dollars, because grants can come from private sources, it can come from other nonprofits, and of course it can come from state, federal governments, and international non-governmental organizations. Wherever the money comes from initially, when it goes to Catholic charities or any other Catholic organization, they are required to give a portion of it, a percentage of it, to the diocese. And the diocese in turn gives a percentage of any money that they pull in to Rome. That's how it works. And so when you have the billions upon billions of dollars that was being given to these organizations back what feels like eternity ago, up until late January, back when this was the main story, we're talking millions of dollars going into the coffers of the dioceses. Virtually every diocese has a Catholic Charities. Virtually every diocese has Catholic Charities engaged in the work that's causing so many problems in the United States now. But you see how this money can come from governments and other organizations. And a lot of times, nonprofit organizations will take a grant from the US government or other governments for a specific purpose that they feel that they can do. They'll accept the grant money. But maybe they accept the grant money, keep a small percentage of it for their own administrative costs, and then subcontract it to another nonprofit. And this can happen multiple times. It's one of the reasons why people look at the amount of money being given out by the government and other groups for nonprofits, and then they see nothing is being done because they keep subcontracting it out. And even the Catholic organizations will do the same. Lepanto Institute has a lot of research and reporting on what happens when the bishops subcontract out to non-Catholic organizations for these kinds of programs. But this entire story here is about money and what happens when the money dries up. From the article, quote, "The Archdiocese of Washington will lay off 1/4 of its chancery workforce Friday." This was this past Friday, as Cardinal Robert McElroy aims to address 5 years of major deficit spending in the nation's capital see. The layoffs are part of McElroy's plan to balance the Archdiocesan Chancery's budget, after the Cardinal lamented crippling economic challenges in the Washington Archdiocese. The financial impacts of the 2020 problem and the fallout of the McCarrick scandal, coupled with an extended period of inflation and volatile financial markets, have proven to be crippling economic challenges to the pastoral center of the Archdiocese, McElroy wrote in a June 5th letter to Curia employees, which was obtained by the Pillar. The pastoral center has had an annual operational deficit of approximately $10 million per year for each of the last 5 years, causing the Archdiocese to withdraw from financial reserves to cover shortfalls. I've come to the painful realization the only way forward is to take drastic measures to achieve a balanced budget by July 1st of this year, the Cardinal added. This means that the Archdiocese will need to cut spending, reduce its workforce, and restructure departments to accommodate a more streamlined pastoral center. The most difficult decision that I have had to make in order to achieve a balanced budget was to authorize a reduction in force to eliminate approximately 30 positions of pastoral center staff. Several vacant positions will be left unfilled, and a number of dedicated, hardworking employees will lose their job. End quote. The biggest line item in almost any organization's budget will be its human resources, meaning how much it costs to employ people. And in the nonprofit world, it's well known that most of the typical employees don't actually get paid that much money. Oftentimes, the further up you get into the organization's hierarchy, that rule doesn't apply. But the typical everyday employees who do the nonprofit work often are paid less than the private sector for equivalent kind of organizational jobs. So I don't know if 30 employees being let go and other jobs not being filled are going to actually have the intended effect that the Cardinal Archbishop is looking for. But they have let off a lot of people. 5 years, though. Now, that's an interesting number. Cardinal Wilton Gregory was Cardinal McElroy's predecessor. Cardinal McElroy became the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, D.C. just in the past few months. And for 5 years or so before him, it was Cardinal Wilton Gregory who was running the show. So something happened in that 5-year period where he either mismanaged things or people stopped giving on a large scale that enough wasn't coming in from other sources to cause a massive problem. And I would hope that there's investigations into this, but I don't think there will be, only because Cardinal McElroy and Cardinal Wilton Gregory are of one and the same mind on most things. They're ideological allies. They are extreme modernists, and the chances of one investigating the other are next to zero. Balg reminds us June is the month for Peter's Pence collection. Just say no. We have traditionally not supported the Peter's Pence around here because it goes to on paper, to supporting the mission of the Holy Father. However, it has gone on to do some really evil things, including Peter's Pence being used for investments into London real estate, Peter's Pence dollars being used to fund biopic films about Elton John, of all people, and all sorts of other weird things. And until it has been demonstrated that the Vatican has this under control and that orthodoxy truly does reign, which, if you saw the Pope's homily from Sunday, I'll just say for now, that doesn't look like it's the case. Before I report on it, I'm waiting for to see if the Vatican is going to respond to the calls for clarification that have been erupting after what some things the Pope said yesterday. But as a general rule, people don't give to Peter's pence. And until things some return to being unequivocally Catholic, a lot of people are just refusing to give. But this also goes for like your diocesan appeals, your Catholic Charities appeals, the Rice Bowl, all these other things that you will see as second collections, people don't give to. A lot of people don't even give to their normal collection. They find other ways to support the efforts of the church, usually by writing a check to the priest himself and saying, this money is for explicitly this purpose, use it for this, and then he will. But a lot of people won't give because they've burned through their trust. Now let's get back to this, because as you're going to see, this is another one. This is a phrase I'm using a lot lately. It doesn't get better. Quote, the Pillar reported in December that the Archdiocesan Curia was facing a $10 million annual operating budget and had faced annual seven-figure deficits before the McCarrick scandal exacerbated the problem. Sources in the Archdiocese pointed both to the McCarrick scandal and they said patterns of mismanagement in recent years as causes of the deficit. At the same time, some prelates have asked whether the Archdiocese pension fund is sufficiently funded, with some predicting that ongoing financial difficulties could eventually lead to delayed retirement ages for archdiocesan priests. The Archdiocese has said it expects the pension fund to remain solvent. But the Chancery's operating budget deficits led Cardinal Wilton Gregory, then Washington's Archbishop, to announce last year a sweeping reform of the Archdiocesan parish assessment system. The new policy made all donations and parish income, even previously restricted gifts and grants, liable to diocesan taxation. That move would generate some $3 million in additional revenue for the Archdiocesan Chancery, Gregory told priests in an October 2024 letter obtained by the Pillar. And what he's talking about here is when they talk about diocesan taxation, that's the tax levied by the bishop on every parish and other organization that is officially sanctioned as a Catholic organization in the diocese. They all have to pay. And there were some that were exempt. They're not exempt anymore. That's how bad things are and had been under Wilton Gregory. The projected revenue increase would seem apparently not enough. As McElroy said Thursday, the Archdiocesan financial reality required the painful decision to cut jobs. Particular employee reductions have not been announced internally. The Archdiocese Human Resources Department is expected to meet with some individual employees Thursday afternoon and Friday morning this past week, ahead of an all-hands meeting June 6th to discuss the layoffs. And while it is not clear how much financial loss can be attributed to the McCarrick scandal, both McElroy and his predecessor have acknowledged that the matter has contributed to revenue decreases in the Archdiocese. That's a nice way of saying that a lot of Catholics stopped giving money because of Ted McCarrick's involvement in things, because of what happened with McCarrick and priests like McCarrick and bishops who hid the problem away. There are a lot of Catholics who refuse to give until there are real signs that this issue has been resolved. And there isn't any. There just hasn't been. Pope Francis said good things on it, but didn't do a lot. The things he did do didn't amount to anything, and you still get reports of bishops hiding priests away who do this stuff. During his tenure in office, Gregory did not release records regarding Theodore McCarrick's own financial activity during the 6 years he led the Washington Archdiocese. But the former cardinal operated an unaudited discretionary fund in the Archdiocese during that time, which was believed to have been used for gifts to church officials in the U.S. and in Rome, and to be possible evidence of the extent of McCarrick's network among the church's hierarchy. It's widely known that Ted McCarrick traveled the world with envelopes full of cash that he would give to not just church officials, as they say here, but to secular political figures as well. That he was running an entire corruption operation. And hardly anybody's been held accountable for that. It's weird how he faced justice, but by the time he came around to it, he wasn't even mentally capable of understanding what was happening to him because he was in his 90s. And that those he worked with, nobody, no names were ever released. No investigations by Rome. If the Holy Father would like to restore trust and unity in the church, I would suggest he turn his attention to the McCarrick Network. Find out who was in it. Make it public. And then seek justice, both in the church system and, if necessary, with the secular authorities. Otherwise, you're not going to get trust restored for a very long time until this all just becomes ancient history, and it's not, because you see the consequences of this still for dioceses going bankrupt. In 2020, there were more than 200 chancery employees in the Washington Archdiocese. That year, the Archdiocese announced 17 layoffs from its chancery staff amid declining revenues impacted by the 2020 affliction. Staff cuts continued so that by 2025, there were roughly 120 chancery employees in the Washington Archdiocese, which is home to 650,000 Catholics. The Archdiocese has not yet been reached for comment. Meanwhile, McElroy's June 5th letter expressed regret for job losses in the Washington Archdiocese. I apologize profoundly to those who will be losing their jobs. This process is not a reflection on the quality or importance of your work, McElroy wrote. I am sensitive to the reality that there are many people and families who will be impacted by this process, whether it be a devoted employee who loses his or her job, a remaining coworker who must take on additional responsibilities, or the ripple effect on the many who are served by an important ministry that can no longer be funded at the past levels. And when there's inevitably an update to the story, I will bring it to you. This is the financial reality facing much of the church today. Things have been mismanaged grotesquely. And part of that mismanagement was just not coming clean about the extent of wicked priests, men who should never have been made priests, and the havoc they caused, and then bishops hiding them away. And a lot of it goes back to the very basic reality. They will not admit, they will refuse to admit that the inclinations that James Martin wants to make acceptable in the church, that he has an unhealthy interest in for a Catholic priest, he believes the teachings on the church are wrong. And there are estimates that like half of the bishops are men cut from that same cloth as those that James Martin goes to bat for. And they refuse to admit that this was part of the problem, to the point where official studies sanctioned by the bishops were asked to have those findings by social scientists who were external to the church, many of them not even Catholic, but have those censored and rewritten. They will not accept reality. They have to accept the reality of sin. The sins that they're trying to deny are sins in order to restore faith in the church. Otherwise, people aren't going to give them money so they can keep operating. And they're going to continue downsizing and downsizing and downsizing until your chancery office is the archbishop, a couple of priests and deacons who help him, and a secretary or two who try to manage the flood of phone calls. Dr. Obvious says, is the elephant in their living room Traditionis Custodes driving faithful out of the diocese? It took their contributions to SSPX and other TLM communities. Well, the SSPX don't do this, but the FSSP, the Institute of Christ the King, and groups like them do give money, a percentage, to the bishop. The SSPX don't because of their irregular canonical status, but the other groups do. So if you mean other TLM groups like sedevacantist groups and so-called independent priests, yeah, that would have a problem, but I don't know if it's enough to have caused that problem. Evelyn says, did Supich really think the laity would be stupid enough to support wicked clergy? They believe that we'll get over it at some time. Damien says the infiltrators want this to happen to collapse the church. Possibly. It wouldn't surprise me at this point. Now, I am going to give you some good news as a palate cleanser. Never let it be said I don't give you good news when there is good news. Just am looking to report it. And it starts with an unpleasant story. We go here to X, posted by just a normal Catholic account, Substack writer. Go check out her Substack if you want to. Address is there on the screen for you if you want to pause it and go pay her a visit. She posted a screenshot of this from X. This happened over the weekend. Coming Monday, yay. Can someone log in this weekend and change out the art? Several weeks ago, I reported to you that Fr Marko Rupnik, that priest who, since the 1980s, had a grotesquely, diabolically disordered interest in nuns. He was the priest who founded a convent for nuns, was their spiritual director. He used his faculties as a priest to absolve them of sins he coerced them into committing with him, sins of the flesh, and he used his faculties as a priest to absolve them of those sins, earning him an automatic excommunication. Pope Francis lifted the automatic excommunication and restored him to active priestly ministry. He had been a Jesuit. I say had been because the Jesuits were like, no, this is way too much for us. You're gone. And they kicked him out. I rarely say good things about the Jesuits. Remarkable. Happy they did it when they found out. And I didn't even tell you about the evil things he had the nuns do with him, by the way. I can't bring myself to verbalize them. They're that diabolical. They just involved impure uses of things involving the holy sacrifice of the Mass. That's all I can say, because I can't bring myself to say it, because it's that evil. Fr Marko Rupnik is known as an artist. He makes weird-looking art, and I'll show you a piece here. His art adorns the Fatima Shrine, the Knights of Columbus's main hall, places all over the Western world, including just some random parishes. You may have seen his art. It looks like that. Monday on the new calendar is the Feast of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of the Church. His art looks weird like that, and a lot of us think it's unsettling looking, and I definitely agree that it is unsettling. But since he was canceled, for good reasons, the Vatican has continued to use his artwork on Vatican News Agency's website. You'll see this. This is after, by the way, I reported that he left Rome to go to Brazil and has since disappeared. Whereabouts unknown, and they were still using this. Amy Wilborn said, yeah, coming Monday, can someone log in this weekend and change the art? That was Saturday, June 7th. This is me reposting it. They changed it. Someone in the Vatican noticed that people were angry and actually cared this time. Maybe the Pope called them and asked, what are you people doing? And they changed it to just a traditional piece of Catholic art. That is good news. They decided to put a stop to this. And I'm not the only one who noticed this. Go here to Matthew Hazel, who says, thanks be to God that as of Pentecost 2025, it seems Rupnik's art is finally no longer used on the Vatican News website to illustrate anything in the English language liturgical feast section. Looks like Francis may have been the issue after all. Francis was protecting him. Possibly just because he was a Jesuit, who knows? But I don't know why he did it. But again, others have noticed that this is now seems to be the case, that finally somebody is doing things about it. There he reported that Rupnik removal appears to be happening in real time. The Spanish page for the Holy Family looks like this. So they've started removing things from various different posts on the Vatican News website of Rupnik's. This was him in response to this saying, back on for June 8th, the Vatican still has a Rupnik up for the Feast of the Holy Family, but we have had significant progress in the removal of these images from Vatican communications, which is good. And he says, updated it later to show that it was gone. Thanks be to God for it. Now, the real question is, will they remove these things from all the places they are? At Lourdes, the rector of Lourdes, for some reason, said, we're going to leave them up, at least on the outside. Why? The things he did are unspeakably evil. There are people who will not go to those sites anymore because his art is there. People who have survived horrible things of the kinds of things he did that they themselves had done to them by other people. And they see the art and it just takes them back immediately. Why would you put that up in any shrine or cathedral, especially a place for healing? It's like people don't have faith. They go, this thing was expensive. We can't take it down. I'm sorry. It was expensive. Take it down. I'm sure some rich Catholics are out there who would happily donate to help replace those frescoes with something else. If you just do the right thing. One of the things you learn in life is if you trust in God during a time of trial, God will generally be there for you in one way or the other. It might be his purpose that you go through the trial. But if you trust in God, things will be okay. As a general rule. You ever wondered why this stuff doesn't get taken down? Why they tolerate this stuff? Timo says the Lord's art is in your face. It absolutely is. It's that way in almost every place. John Paul II's shrine, Fatima, in any place it is, it's jarring because it's just something off about it. But if you ever wonder why they don't take it down, the man I call the professional Francis fan fiction writer, I posted the screenshot to the Return to Tradition Facebook page. If you are on Facebook, consider giving it a follow. I don't post my videos there, but I do post things there of all kinds. I posted there saying, just in case you're wondering why a certifiable monster's tacky art still pollutes iconic Catholic sites around the world, this is Austin Ivere. I call him the professional Francis fanfiction writer because he was the English language biographer for Pope Francis. And in his spare time, he had this hobby of reporting traditional Latin masses that were not following Traditionis Custodes to the T. He'd call up the local bishop to report them so they'd get shut down. That's what he did. That's the kind of person we're talking about here. He was also one of the men who ran the Synod on Synodality, some of the lay side of things, for the continental sessions in Europe. Is extraordinarily well connected in the Vatican. And while I don't usually go after laymen in the church in my reporting, he's an exception to that rule for obvious reasons. And he owns Rupniks. He has them in his home, which says a lot. Here's what he says. Sacraments are ex opere operato. Why not a great religious artist's work? Rupnik stays on my wall. I don't approve of what he has done, but his are works of grace, and I don't want to reject grace. Shocked that God makes use of sinners? Try the Gospels. People are pointing out in the comments on that, yes, Austin Ivere just compared the artwork of Marko Rupnik to sacraments. He compared them to the sacraments. He's saying that they are divinely inspired. And this is why you won't see the stuff taken down in most places. It takes a lot of pressure in the places they have been taken down to get them taken down. What it might take is a very rich Catholic stepping forward, calling the individual places and saying, I will pay to replace these pieces of art for you if you take them down. I will replace them. I'll pay to replace them with some normal Catholic-looking things. I'll even let you give a final approval, as long as I get some say on what goes on there. But otherwise, we'll take them down. I will pay the whole price. That is how long they're going to be up for. And even then, some of them will reject it. Because I suspect many of these men find spiritual kinship with Marko Rupnik. But it is good news that the Vatican is pulling these things off of the Vatican News website, that they are correcting a mistake. That is a sign for a positivity and hope. Traditional Catholic says that is an immensely weird take on Ivere's part. He is the master of immensely weird takes on things that normal Catholics find appalling. He is. He has this weird habit of accidentally telling the truth about things and thinking that that's going to cover for things. He just has that habit. Giving the best example I can give you is when he wrote his book, The Great Reformer. The first edition of that book, it's a biography of Pope Francis. And in the first edition of that book, he goes into way too many details about then Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio's time in Argentina, to the point where it became the best source of information about his treatment of his own priests and his relationship with the military junta of that country. And it was not nice. It wasn't good at all. It explained almost everything that we went through the last 12 years. Future editions of that book had most of that stuff removed. He said too much. He has a weird habit of accidentally telling the truth. ICLT says, I really prefer the Renaissance art. It is stunning. You cannot beat classic Catholic art. You simply cannot. And there are artists today with those skills and who have developed skills beyond those. As the skill, art history is full of the development of skill, development of technique, development of skill. There are contemporary artists who make absolutely mind-blowingly life-accurate paintings and sculptures. And they don't get attention because they are contemporary artists, not modern artists. Massive difference. It might be a good time for the church to become a patron of the arts again, to counter the errors of modern art. Let's check here. Yeah, Timaz, Lords is in your face. It absolutely is. He also used the free super chat that all channel members get. If you're a member of the channel, have that free super chat they give you once a month. It's true for any channel you're on. Make sure to use it. You are paying for it. I'm going to wrap this up. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Are you happy to see Marko Rupnik's art taken down? Are you wondering why it doesn't get taken down in other places? Maybe others will follow the Vatican's lead on this. Let me know what you think about this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.